Selassie, Ethiopia. Right. Thank you so much for your introduction, Raskwesi. My name is Ajete Ashia. I'm a Rastafari youth from Ghana. Right now, I'm domiciled in London. Um, and I'm happy to present the topic to the Rastafari versus the development of Africa to the House. First of all, we pay libation to our ancestors. We call on our ancestors to aid us in our discussion today so that we have a fruitful result. May our ancestors guide us through all these deliberations for a fruitful result. Oshe, Ihiawo. First of all, I'll tell you about the origins of Rastafari. We'll talk about the key beliefs of Rastafari, the cultural significance of Rastafari, and the symbolism. We'll talk about the progress and evolution of Rastafari, modern developments of Rastafari. Rastafari emerged in Jamaica during the 1930s. Long before that, Africans have had the sentiments about a free Africa. And then when Haile Selassie was crowned King of Kings in Ethiopia, the brothers in Jamaica especially, and some all over the world, gravitated towards the emperor, gravitated towards Ethiopia, and they saw as Haile Selassie as the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And since then, Rastafari has gone on to have many evolutions over the time. We'll talk about that. Here we have key beliefs. The central to Rastafari is a belief in Haile Selassie of Ethiopia and the importance of connecting with African roots. Followers often reject Western materialism and promote a natural lifestyle, including vegetarianism and ritual use of marijuana, which they consider a sacrament. Cultural significance of Rastafari to the movement. We have the music aspect of things, particularly through artists like Bob Marley, Boniwela, Peter Tosh, who were the original whalers, among the original whalers, and then like Burning Spear. We have the modern artists in the dance, so we have people like Sizzla, we have people like Appleton, we have people like Morgan Heritage, and they have all contributed to how people see the movement. So it's all different views along. All the musicians have their own views, and it's about religion. When you say we're talking about Rastafari, people have been able to religion make it into a religion, but it's a movement that is not religious. It's not supposed to be religious. It's supposed to be a movement because religion is what we are trying to run away from. In fact, when we look at religion, we can see that religion is expressed individually. Religion is supposed to be expressed individually. But when we find it being dogmatic and making it like a format that everybody must follow, then it's like everybody must adhere to, then it becomes problematic because then it becomes controlling. So we're looking at a situation where individuals have a relationship with their own God, and it's nobody can have dominion over the other to tell them how to have a relationship with their God. So that it's all about liberation, love for humanity, especially Africans, because Africans, we tend to love everybody and we happen not to love ourselves so much so that we find ourselves in a precarious situation right now in the whole world affairs. In the ladder of the world, we find out that Africans, everywhere we find ourselves, happen to be at the bottom of the ladder, which is quite unfortunate given that we have had a very rich history where it has not always been that we are at the bottom of the ladder. We are at the bottom of the ladder everywhere we go now. In Europe, in America, even in our own African land, we find Africans suffering at the expense of other people. We have the symbolism of colors that the colors red, green, and gold, red, gold, and green, inspired by the Ethiopian flag, are significant in Rastafari culture, representing the blood of the martyrs, the land of Africa, and the wealth of Africa, respectively. As the red for the blood of the martyrs and ancestors, the green for the land of Africa, and also the yellow for the wealth of Africa. And we talk about the social justice and activism of Rastafari. Rastafari has been involved in various social justice movements, advocating for the rights of marginalized communities. The religion emphasizes on the resistance against oppression, resonates with broader struggles for equality and justice. In recent years, there has been growing acceptance of Rastafari practices such as the use of marijuana for religious purposes, with some Caribbean nations legalizing its use for Rastafarians. And it's interesting that in Jamaica also, even in Jamaica, where a lot of people have been incarcerated and put in prison for over a long period. Recently, I saw a video where the brothers went to court and were able to justify the use of the herb, and then they were free. The herb was released to them, and they returned it, and it was returned to them. So these are the broad views around Rastafari. Excuse me. These are the broad views around Rastafari that we're going to look at today, and see how religious beliefs that we have entertained over the years and how it's affecting the movement. We see that in religion, there is a dogma, and the Bible has played a very significant role in our enslavement. There also that Europeans have used the doctrine of the Bible to justify their enslavement, even enslavement of Africans, so that Africans believe that we sort of look less upon our own abilities and always look up to these Europeans and the way they've indoctrinated us. It's in the indoctrination in the sense that it was forced on us, and that is what I also like to emphasize, that it was forced on us, and it has led us to have a lesser value for our own initiative, our own inward ability of redeeming ourselves and making us and becoming some people and carving our way and having our own place in life where we are not dependent on people, any other nation, that we can be independent, truly independent as African people. In a sense that the whole of the continent, slaves were extracted from the continent for a long period of time, sent over to Europe and America. And before then, I'll have to talk about the Arab infiltration of Africa, where Arabs were enslaving Africans over the Sahara Desert to Arabia. And they used Islam to do that. Today, it's a mystery why Africans cannot divorce ourselves from this Arabic religion, which is Islam, and also divorce ourselves from the Christian religion, which is European. And we keep to adhering to it to the detriment of our own indigenous values and cultural values. So that when we find out every nation, they uphold their ancestry. The ancestors are very important to them. And when we talk about ancestors, no, it looks like we don't have anything of value to garner from our ancestors, to gain from our ancestors, and our ancestors are vilified. Our ways of worship are vilified. And they tell us about a God and he is a savior, the only God and the only savior that we must adhere to. And I think that puts us in a kind of straitjacket where we are not able to navigate ourselves properly. We are kind of tied down and not able to find true redemption and that independence that we need to survive and be happy as a people, so that we are always dependent on others. Through religion and through science, technology, we seem not to have any confidence in ourselves. All we want to do is we follow other people, which is keeping us back. And that we are not truly independent. Interestingly, I've always had a view that when it comes to independence and the celebration of independence, we don't have anything to celebrate. We have nothing to celebrate really, but we always find ourselves as a child from my childhood. I've been when I was from the age of 6 or 7, I joined the boys' brigade as a Presbyterian when I lived among Presbyterian people. So that's where I found my religious beginnings as a Presbyterian. Then along the line, I moved and lived with my mother, who is a Catholic, and that's when also she gave me the Catholic background of religion. Religion has been a divisive force amongst us. It has divided us. People would argue that religion is a unifying force. Religion is not a unifying force among Africans. It has divided us. It is denominations. Already, it makes us also bring out the various tribes amongst us. And then already we are divided among our tribes, but the tribes did not divide us so much as religion, as the religion that they put amongst us. We seem to cope well because it's natural of the African to cope with others, even across religions from Islam to Christian. We all seem to live together peacefully in Ghana, but there are undertones where it boils up and then it affects us adversely. And so I believe religion is something that we must have a critical look at if we are to go forward as a people, if we are to survive as a people, if we are to not just survive, but excel as a people and live life happily, as some people who have also developed something for ourselves. I'm of the view that when the Rastafari movement began, the adherents took on certain cultural expressions like the dreadlocks, which was there long before even we started talking about Rastafari. It's among people. Africans have been dreadlocks, and Leonard Well would say that when he went around in his travels, they found dreadlocks in places in America. And before Rastafari itself being identified with Rastafari when Emperor Haile Selassie was crowned king of Ethiopia, there were dreadlocks already, and there were use of marijuana. And then when Haile Selassie is crowned king, Leonard Howell in particular made pictures of Haile Selassie and sold it for shilling a piece so that to promote and then use the money for charity purposes. And then around 1933 on to 1934, he said in 1934, a ship will come and then will take us, will take the people, the adherents, the believers, adherents, and the people of Rastafari to Africa. So there's a lot of development along that, and then people, African sentiments, always wanting to return from bondage to a place where we can be on our own and we can be in our own life and have our own space to create our own. That has eluded us till now. Are we going to get there? It's a question that we must ask. So it's all about the divinity of Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie himself has never told us he's a divine person or imposed himself on us. Rastafari people have always looked on him, and the first Rastas looked on him as a king. From my readings in the first Rastas, what I gather is that the Rasta people looked on him as a king, and the divinity was not so much there. This development about a divinity came later on when adherents of the faith who were Christians were reading the Bible and trying to find inroads and trying to merge it. But the initial Rastas were moving from that when they sat down to King George and up with an African king, one of our own. Um, well, like I said, Rastafari is a cultural expression where the initial Rastas never prescribed to a creator and the Bible aspect of things. They had a cultural expression where they were doing their own things. They could build their houses based on their thinking of Rastafari and the inspiration it gave them to how they dressed, how they went about everyday life, relationships with women and things and all of that. So it went on and on. It's been on and on. But then, again, I say the religious aspect of things, people sticking to the religion and the dogma of things is really keeping us down. For instance, one aspect I can give that Sunday worship in Ghana, most people, as in Ghana, and then also when we come to the West, we see that the Western people They don't believe in this religion that they've passed on to us. And we are holding on to this religion that they have passed on to us. But they don't believe in these religions anymore. They have advanced beyond that. And they are more into science and technology. They are into music, they're into arts and developing. And technology has taken us so far. Yet we Africans, because of our inclination to that old belief, are refusing to follow suit, to really get out of our shell and be some and develop ourselves. We have become trapped in the politics that has been given to us, and we want to follow other people's ways all the time, not developing our own ways, because developing our own ways is against the interests of these people who have enslaved us and colonized us. We have been left as a defeated and conquered people, enslaved and colonized in our own land and other places, and colonized in other places, taken other places and colonized, like Jamaica and America and the Caribbean in general. So what I'm trying to express to us here today is that how are we going to move away from this religious dogma where they give us a Jesus, and so we who try to dodge the Jesus aspect, says Jesus is black, and we turn him into a black person. But the message that this Jesus carries is the same message that our indoctrinators have been giving us all this while, and it's keeping us down. I believe in a creator, I believe in prayer and things like that. Whereas we pray to an imaginary person where we don't know where the prayers is going and we don't see any results out of it. And we keep doing the same thing and we keep doing the same thing. And yet we don't see any results, but we are afraid to do differently. Um, I think it's come to a point where we must be able to evolve as a people, be able to move out of that old dogma, that old lifestyle where we believe in the creator and the religious aspect of things, but move from there to an aspect where we can be able to fall on ancestors who use experience of life, the elements, and with that, lived for so long for us to be here today and pass it on for and survive for so long for us to be here today, as against this religion, which keeps us enslaved and colonized as a colonized people. Yes. So we find out that I said the movement has evolved over time, and to stop maybe from repeating myself, and I would like to at this point introduce our I have a resource person here. His name is Meb. He has traveled. He's a marine biologist. He's lived in Ghana. He's been in a lot of places, and I've seen has a lot of experience. he's an Ethiopian, and he would give us a few light or a light on how Ethiopians view the Emperor Haile Selassie, and so we can see if we can get something out of it to further the discussion. Thank you, Meb.
Hi, I'm here, Ash.
Yeah, Meb. All right. So please give us your view of how Ethiopians have and how Ethiopians value Haile Selassie and yes, if you can, please.
Yeah, thank you, Ash. My name is Meb. Ash said I'm Ethiopian, but I'm Eritrean. Long time ago, until 1991, Eritrea and Ethiopia were one country. But in 1991, Eritrea separated from Ethiopia after 30 years of struggle for independence. And I'll mention that later. And this has also to do with the policy of Haile Selassie. So thank you for introducing me, Ash. I'm Meb, and as I said, I'm a marine biologist by profession, but I'm also interested in history, especially the history of the Horn of Africa. And I read a lot about history of Ethiopia and the region, and also the whole of Africa. Before going deep, I think it's important also to have a context. When we're talking about Haile Selassie, we have to go back and see the time when Haile Selassie was in power in the 1930s to 1970s, because he was in power for 4 decades. So if you wanna to get a lesson from history, you have to go back, analyze, and history should not be used for politics and also should not be weaponized. So we should say it as how it was at the time, not based on our experience at the moment. So when Haile Selassie was in power, in Ethiopia, there were 3 main questions. One question was a question of land. The other was a question of ethnic equality. And the third question of a question of democracy. And despite the introduction of modernization instruments, like, for example, the first constitution of Ethiopia was introduced by Haile Selassie. Modern education was introduced by Menelik, but it became national during Haile Selassie, but also infrastructure expanded in Ethiopia. So, but this is economic development. But the 3 questions that I raised, question of land, ethnic equality, and democracy, they were not answered at the time of Haile Selassie. Historically, land in Ethiopia was dominated by the church and the aristocracy. And the mass of Ethiopia, they were serfs. It was a feudal system, and the land was owned by the church and the aristocracy. And the farmers had to give like 1/3 of their produce to the aristocracy and the church. Most of the time, but sometimes also it could be to even 3/4. So in some areas, especially the southern and southwestern part of Ethiopia, where you have many ethnic groups, that's also the fertile land of Ethiopia. These people didn't have a lot of produce because whatever they produced was taken by the aristocracy. So when Haile Selassie was deposed in 1974, one of the main questions was the question of land. the revolution that were led by students, the military, and the farmers were the main cause for why Haile Selassie was deposed. Although in the end, the revolution was hijacked by the military. But the main question was a question of land. So when Haile Selassie was deposed, that question of land was not answered. It was answered in 1974 by the Derg, the government of Mengistu Haile Mariam. They had a policy, Maret Larashu, means land to the tiller. So all that land was taken from the aristocracy and from the church, and the people that were tilling the land were allowed to own it. So on the issue of ethnic equality, in Ethiopia, now in Eritrea, we have 9 ethnic groups. In Ethiopia, there are about 85 ethnic groups. In total, at the time before the independence of Eritrea, and at the time of Haile Selassie, there were about more than 90 ethnic groups. But at that time, the Amhara, the Christian Coptic, were the dominant one. These were the aristocracy. The Amhara, and sometimes also northern part in Tigray. So the aristocracy, the church, the Coptic Church, Orthodox Church, and the aristocracy, they were mostly dominated by the Amhara. So the rest of the remaining ethnic groups were considered as second citizens. And these were the people that did not own the land.
Mm.
And also, because the government and the religion was extremely related, because, as you know, the Ethiopia believed at the time, based on the Kebra Nagast, the throne of Ethiopia comes from Israel. They think they are inheritors of the Solomonic dynasty. So every leader of Ethiopia, from the Queen of Sheba and Menelik first to Haile Selassie, they consider themselves the descendants of Solomon from Israel. For example, Haile Selassie was the son of Prince Mokonnen, so he's called Tafari Mokonnen, so the son of Prince Mokonnen. From his dad's side, he was Amhara, but from his mom's side, was an Oromo. But when you come in power, because you have to legitimize your system, the power, you have to call yourself that you are descendant of Solomon. So every king that came in Ethiopia, somehow they have to say, I came from the Solomonic dynasty. So they had to distort the history, because otherwise you would not have acceptance by the church, because the church and aristocracy were the main source of power. So this means out of the 85 ethnic groups, the Amhara were the dominant, and also the Tigrayans. The rest of the ethnic groups, which is about 60% of Ethiopia, was treated as second citizen. For example, at one stage, Queen Menen, the wife of Haile Selassie, was asked by journalists, what's the size of the population in Ethiopia, or how many people are there in Ethiopia? So she said, including the Oromos, we are 16 million. So normally you just give the number, but she said including the Oromos. And the Oromos are the dominant group in Ethiopia, 35% of Ethiopia. So she's saying the Oromos are not equal as Amhara. So she's saying if you include the Oromos, we are 16 million, because at that time they were about 16 million. So one of the cause of the revolution, for this reason, which also was interlinked to the issue of land, was the issue of ethnic equality. All these people that had less rights they rose against Amhara. Actually, the student revolution of the 1960s, most of them were Oromos and Amharas, because the Amharas also resented the system. Although they were privileged, the enlightened members of the Amhara were against the system because they wanted Ethiopia to develop and become a modern country. So when Haile Selassie was deposed, as I said, land was under the aristocracy and the church. So he failed to reform Ethiopia in that regard. Ethnic equality was not recognized because the Amhara and the Tigrayans were the dominant group. So this question of land was answered in 1974 when the Derg had a policy of land to the tiller. And then the issue of ethnic federalism was resolved in the 1996 because now Ethiopia has ethnic federal system. Although it's not completely resolved, but they are trying to bring equality of all ethnic groups. But it's going to take very long time for that to take place. Democracy is a question of all the countries in the world, especially all countries in Africa. So Ethiopia still has failed to resolve that issue of democracy. So when Haile Selassie was in power, he failed to resolve all these three main questions of Ethiopia. To go back to his origin also, as I said, Rastafari or Haile Selassie was the son of Prince Mokonnen, and Prince Mokonnen was one of the main generals of Menelik, King Menelik. So by blood, Haile Selassie is not entitled to be a king. So when Menelik died, because the system was patrilineal, Iyasu, in Ethiopian terms, was called Lij Iyasu. Lij Iyasu is the grandson of Menelik. The grandson of Menelik was to become the king. But at that time, Haile Selassie was regent because he comes because he was the son of Prince Mokonnen, who was a confidant of Haile Selassie. So he was made a regent at the time of Menelik in Harar. So when Iyasu came to power, Haile Selassie and the aristocrats had to make a conspiracy to depose Iyasu. And what they said was, Iyasu is not Christian because Iyasu was like a flamboyant character. He was moving around. He was trying to modernize Ethiopia. So he was traveling to Muslim areas. And I think he also got married to a Muslim girl. So the aristocracy led by Haile Selassie, they had a conspiracy against Iyasu. So they said he was a Muslim, he was an infidel, so he should not be the king. So finally, Haile Selassie, surrounded by the aristocracy, and also some of the aristocracy that were supporting Lij Iyasu, had to fight. They had a war in a place outside Addis Ababa. It's called the War of Shegele. And then at that time, the army of Iyasu was defeated, and Iyasu was made a prisoner. This was in 1921. Until 1935, Iyasu was a prisoner. 1935 is when the fascist Mussolini government of Italy occupied Ethiopia, and Haile Selassie had to flee to come to England. So what happened? The Italians, because they were against Haile Selassie, and then they knew that Iyasu was the legitimate heir of the system. So the plan was to bring back Iyasu into power. So from 1921 to 1935, he was in prison. But when Haile Selassie fled to England, he made also sure that Iyasu disappeared. So there is no trace of him, but people say Haile Selassie killed him. So he killed him and came to England so that when he's in England, the Italians would not give the throne to Iyasu. I think there is one thing that I'd like to mention in the end, the issue of regional politics or African politics and Haile Selassie. As we all know, at that time in the 1960s, Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, and these people were seen as the leaders of Pan-Africanism. But if you look at it really, because Ethiopia had a Red Sea at the time, so the Red Sea is a strategic position. Even now, 14% of the global marine trade passes through the Red Sea. So it's a global choke point, and the Americans, the Europeans are interested in keeping the Red Sea secure. So at the end of World War II in 1945, just Roosevelt, before he died, the Yalta conference in Turkey, in Black Sea. After the Yalta conference, where they had a meeting among Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill, from Yalta, Roosevelt went straight to Egypt. And then in the ship in the Red Sea, he invited Haile Selassie, the king of Egypt, the king of Saudi Arabia, and they made a deal. So the deal was that the Red Sea region would be secured by the Americans. The Americans would support Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt because they want to control the Red Sea. In Eritrea, or in a place called Kanyu, the Americans installed the biggest satellite system at the time, communication system at the time, and the communication system was controlling the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. So Haile Selassie was playing really a dual point. On one side, he was Pan-Africanist, working with Nkrumah and others. And on the other side, he was an instrument of the Americans. The Ethiopian army, the Ethiopian system was formed by the Americans. The first, they call it Kubur Zabenya, the commandos of Ethiopia, they were trained by the Americans and by the Israelis. All the army, the military system, every year Ethiopia had to receive money from the Americans. That's why when in the 1960s, I think was it 62 or 63, when Haile Selassie went to America, he was received by fanfare, he was accepted, received by Kennedy in Washington with all those marches and things. It was like a festivity in Washington because he was their man. That was the time when the Eritrean question also rose. Because Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, and Libya were the colonies of Italy. So when the Italians were defeated in World War II and when Haile Selassie was brought back by the English and he was reinstated to power, so the question was arose in the United Nations. So what do we do with the colonies of Italy? That's Eritrea, Somalia, and Libya. So after a long discussion, the United Nations decided that Eritrea should be federated with Ethiopia. So in 1952, a federation was started, and the federation was for 10 years. After 10 years, the Eritreans would vote whether to be independent. If they want to be independent, they can be independent. If they wanted to remain with Ethiopia, they can remain with Ethiopia. Or if there is a third option, they can accept a third option. But Haile Selassie in 1962 annexed Eritrea, and the rules of the federation was dissolved. That's when the Eritrean independence struggles started. Started of course 1991, but the federation was dissolved in 1992. If you look at the problem the Ethiopia is undergoing now, most of it was started during Haile Selassie. The seed was sown at the time of Haile Selassie, but then the Derg didn't improve it. The EPRDF government that came in 1991 also didn't help. So Ethiopia is still in that quagmire. From time to time, Ethiopia politically is going backwards. Although there is some economic improvement, politically Ethiopia still remains divided. And most of that problem started during the time of Haile Selassie. Because if he had left Eritrea as a member of the federation with Ethiopia, it would have been good for Ethiopia also. Because all regions, they would have autonomy, but they would also be part of Ethiopia and they would have a strong Ethiopia. But because Haile Selassie thought Eritrea is very small and we could conquer it very easily, so he dissolved that federation, and the Ethiopians and the Eritreans went to the mountains to fight. So they fought for 30 years, and in the end, Eritrea became independent and Ethiopia became landlocked now. It's the largest landlocked country in the world, 125 million people now, and it's the largest landlocked country in the world and in Africa. And this is because of the policy of Haile Selassie. In relation to Pan-Africanism, in the 1990s, in the African Union, there was a proposal to build a statue for Nkrumah and Haile Selassie in order to recognize their efforts in the Pan-Africanist movement. So some countries, including the Ethiopian government at the time, they accepted the installment of the statue of Nkrumah, but they refused to install a statue for Haile Selassie. The statue of Haile Selassie was installed only in 2018, just recently. Until that time, the Ethiopians said no, because this was a feudal king and he represented oppression. A lot, especially the minority ethnic groups, they were against it because for them, Haile Selassie represented the dominance of the Amhara. He also represented the dominance of a feudal system where land was under the aristocracy and the church. So they refused to build a statue for Haile Selassie, but recently they have the statue. So there is what I want to say is a conflict. Was Haile Selassie Pan-Africanist, or was he an instrument of Americans? So it's to be left for history to judge, really. The other issue with Haile Selassie is also the famine of the 1970s. A lot of Ethiopians resented Haile Selassie during the famine for the famine, because when most of Ethiopia, especially the northern part, when it was engulfed by famine, Haile Selassie was really having a lavish life. The Ethiopian TV was showing Haile Selassie feeding his dogs and things like that. So Ethiopians resented Haile Selassie for that, and it also activated and facilitated the movement or the revolution that deposed him in 1974. Another thing is, despite the introduction of the constitution in 1955, the system, as I said, remained still dominated by the aristocracy and the church. So the constitution was only on paper; it was nominal. It didn't work. So Haile Selassie was aging when he died. He was in his 80s, and all the aristocracy was aging. As I said earlier, he had invested a lot in education. A lot of young Ethiopians got educated, especially in America and Western countries, but they had no role in the country. That's why all this, the students and the professors led that revolution of 1974. It was an aging system. It became ineffective, and it failed to modernize Ethiopia, and that facilitated the failure of the revolution, and also the deposition of the Haile Selassie government. So I think this should be enough.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your very informative presentation, and I thank you. I'll say thank you, and then I'll take it on from here. We can see that Haile Selassie has been praised by the West, and then we've been told by Samora Machel that when we see him being praised, if Africans should ever see Samora Machel being praised, then we should know that he has sold us out. So we see that Haile Selassie, before Meb has shown us here, has done a few mistakes. So then, we're all human. And Haile Selassie is human. He's quite an outstanding person. I will give him that. And so were the outstanding people of all his time, who, interestingly, if you read their histories, they were all knew each other in places like Britain and America. They all came across each other from time to time. And we were all looking for a solution to a crisis which had emerged. People had faith in certain things. People had beliefs, but faith is born of belief. And we also have facts and history which should guide us. Now, if you look at some things like prophecies, if you look at something like prophecy, they say this one is a prophet and that one is a prophet. I believe that even all the prophets of old, when you look into the Bible, those who were there, they weren't doing those prophecy born from magical influences or that they had superior abilities than the ordinary people. What they could do was look at the trend of history and how history has played out, and see that true way it played out in the past, in the future, this is how things can emerge. And then they make a prophecy about that. They make a forecast. And then when it comes true, we say, yes, that was a good forecast. And when it doesn't come true, we know it hasn't come true. And then we move on from there and try to find solutions to our problems. And we've been doing that all over the years. Ethiopia is believed to be the only African country which has not been colonized. I beg to differ, because when you go in Ethiopia, first of all, Christianity is not an African religion. Christianity is a European religion based on African cultural practices and cultural expressions that Europeans picked up and then developed into European logics, and then they've come to place it on us. And whilst we have taken it hook, line, and sinker, we have not been able to survive by it.
Can
in
I say
Ethiopia,
something, Raj?
yes,
Sorry
please.
for intervening.
Yeah.
Because Africa is very diverse. So
Mm.
in our region, the Horn of Africa, like
Mm.
Ethiopia, Eritrea, also Egypt. If you look at the Coptic religion,
Yes.
Christianity started in Ethiopia in the 4th century during the time of the Aksumites, and
Yeah.
also Islam in the 7th century. So
Mm.
if you look at the rest of Africa, Christianity was introduced by the Europeans just recently. But Ethiopia,
Mm.
Eritrea, Christianity and Islam were very old religions. Christianity was introduced even before Europe. So it is integrated into the culture. Um, if you go to my village in the countryside in Eritrea,
Mm-hmm.
uh, every village has got. If it's a Muslim village, it has got a mosque. If it's a Christian village, it's got a church. And this has gone for generations and generations. So it has percolated, or it has transferred into the values of the society, community. So religions, especially Coptic Christianity in Ethiopia and Eritrea, is an integral part of the culture and values of the people. It reflected in the land tenure system. For example, when people administer their land or whatever their resource, religion is always there. The values, the moral values, are all guided by religion. So I think it's important to not to generalize. And
Well, but then,
one thing I'd like to add to, I forgot about Haile Selassie was I forgot one important point. Um, when Haile Selassie was exiled in 19, he was exiled in 1935, and then that speech in Geneva, when he spoke against the Italians, that was very important. We need to give him credit. That's very historic speech, because what he said was, because at that time when the Italians invaded Ethiopia, the British, the French, and the Americans didn't say anything. Actually, they supported the Italians. And this is before the start of World War II. And then in Geneva, Haile Selassie said, you're covering your eyes today, you're blindfolded, but this thing is going to engulf the whole world. This is not only about Ethiopia, this is about the whole world. So he cried really because the world was not listening. They did not condemn the fascist system. So we need to give him that. That was a
yeah,
big point. Yeah.
yeah, extraordinary man, extraordinary man, very, very influential man.
Yeah.
And so, what I would like to for you to make clear, when these Europeans, two Europeans came into Ethiopia looking for the Holy Grail and Prester Jones,
Yeah.
but when they came, Prester Jones was long gone. And
Yeah.
that was the introduction of some sort of foreign
Preston Jones
Christianity.
did not exist. It's just imaginary figure.
Imaginary
Yeah.
figure thing that was there. And so when they came, of course, they couldn't find him. And even then, it has something which has been there long ago before they showed up. So even if Preston Jones was there from when they started saying it, he would have been dead by the time those Europeans showed up. But then they showed up with European concepts of Christianity, which they inculcated into the Ethiopian way of worship. Africans all over have been have we have always been
Yes,
trying to
yes,
find a
yes, my
way to
brother.
make
Yes, my brother.
yes.
Greetings, my brother. Can I ask a
Greetings.
question?
Yes,
Can I ask a question? Very well.
please.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, the man from Eritrea or Ethiopia, he's his speech has done a lot of revision for me. It has revised what I've learned long ago, and I'm very happy that he has reiterated all those points about ethnicity or tribalism in Ethiopia. It's not very different from Ghana or any other African country for that matter. But on this platform, we are more interested in what will bring Africa together. We are thinking about Africa unity. So all that history that he has given us, how does it help in Africa unity? Thank you very much for the revision. Thank you so much for that wonderful revision of Ethiopian history. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. I believe that, like I was saying before, if you go into the Ethiopian churches at the moment, you will find out that the Christianity, the pictures and the thing they have there is all European. They have white people pictures there. Of the Virgin is a white person. Jesus is a white person. But Africans in Jamaica, America, we try to find our expression in an African way. We try to make Africanized Christianity to suit us. So most times we find ourselves cutting our feet to fit into the shoe. You see? So religion is what is playing a big role in our development right now, and it is really, really slowing us down. So that if we could really look at religion and where to place it in our lives, then we are more able to look forward as to how we are going to develop ourselves, void of faith and sentiments and superstition, and more rather look at evidence, history, and knowledge of what we can do to develop ourselves. I've not come to find I don't say I've had a solution where I'm going to tell us here what we can do in our future to make it work. But I believe that if we look at this situation of religion, for instance, we are in a situation in Ghana right now where we have charlatans and priests. They have taken over the country, who are promising us salvation in heaven after death, so that the people who follow the faith are scared. They really, because of fear, they do it because of fear and not because of anything that is progressive. It's only from fear. The politicians, they tell us promise us relief here on earth, and we are finding out that it's been lies and lies and lies. We have a situation in Ghana where an illiterate woman who was once a fetish, who was practicing fetishism, and then they found out that that trade was not really yielding and could see that Christianity is where she could make her more money, turned into Christian, and we find ministers of states, parliamentarians flocking to her. The other guy we had was some guy they call Obinim, until he was also run out not long ago, who was capturing, who was being
my brother,
consulted by, yeah.
I thought you will allow the guest speaker to answer my question, no?
Yeah, I think I can answer. I can answer your question. You said ethnic tribal issues are a problem in Ethiopia, but also in Ghana and throughout Africa. So, how do we unite Africa given that context, isn't it? For example, as I said earlier, there was issue of ethnic equality issue in Ethiopia. So this new constitution that was introduced in 1996 in Ethiopia, what it does is it has institutionalized ethnicity or tribalism. Instead of, so if you look at the first paragraph of the constitution, it says Ethiopia belongs to the regions, and the regions are based on ethnicity. If you look at the regions now, you have Oromia, Amhara, Tigray, based on ethnic groups. So when you make map when you create map of ethnic groups, then there is a problem because physically you are dividing people. So, for example, you've heard about this Tigray war. The main cause of that Tigray war is because this new constitution has created a border between Amhara and Tigray. So the Tigrayans and Amhara are fighting over the region, the border that they share, a region that's called fertile region that's called Welkait, whatever. So the Tigrayans are saying Welkait is ours, and the Amhara are saying Welkait is ours. But before they didn't have this problem. Of course, you need to have equality of ethnic groups, but in my opinion, Africans should be careful from
Give you one
institutionalizing
example.
ethnicity.
Yeah. I can also give you one example. Sudan,
Yeah.
Sudan and Sudan.
Yep.
It's not new. What is happening in Eritrea, Ethiopia, it's not new. In Ghana, we have had problems like that. Even as of now, there was a conflict in Boku, the
Do you
northern
have
part
that
of Ghana.
problem? I thought in Ghana.
When you go to Ivory Coast, when you go to Ivory Coast, there was that problem that led to a civil war some time ago. So I don't think it's very new. What is happening in Ethiopia or Eritrea is very new to Africa. But we are talking about the solution. What is the solution to the problem?
I understand, but the difference with Ghana is in Ghana it's not institutionalized. Although people fight, the politicians exploit ethnic difference, whatever.
The solution.
Does the constitution of Ghana say? Does the constitution divide Ghana based on ethnicity?
Oh, really?
As I said, in
Ethnicity.
Ethiopia, the country is divided based on ethnic groups. So instead of having citizen politics, instead of citizens voting for government, whatever,
I'm saying is that all these things are there. When you go to there's a conflict between the what do we call them? What is it? I've forgotten. There are two.
I think you're muted.
Two ethnic groups there, and there's a conflict between them. But there is European unity. They have been at war several times, the European countries, 2 world wars, but they have been able to establish unity. So in spite of all these
but how long did it take? Like the Europeans Union
differences, in spite of all these myriad problems, we have unity. We can make it better.
Yeah. So
yes,
the European Union, it took
yes,
them.
all
It took them 70 years from 1945 after the World War II. They developed slowly. The infrastructure developed. They had NATO. They have the European Union, which started from Benelux. It was started by 3 countries, Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and it grew organically. But in Africa, we don't have that. So to develop like an African Union, you have to have proper communication. For example, Africans should be allowed to move from place to place, to trade, to live, to exchange, and then the difference becomes minimal or becomes really pointless. That's how it started in Europe. So it grew organically. It didn't just start at one time. So that's how we should be. But citizen politics is very important. And ethnic politics should not be institutionalized. That's the main problem. In Ghana, you don't have that. I know the politics is influenced by ethnicity, by tribalism, I know, but it's not constitutional. You had it constitutionally in Nigeria a long time ago in the 1960s when you had the Biafra war, because you had big ethnic groups forming a region. So Ethiopia is repeating the 1960s experience of Nigeria. So what they should do is politics should come first, and then ethnic equality should come second. The ethnic system should not undermine the rights of citizens.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. What I was going to add was that to go forward as a people, to develop, to go past all our differences and be able to develop, we should really be able to look at this Christian thing and then foreign religion and how they are influencing us. That is occupying the space where we can be able to develop our own thinking and along our ancestral lines, along our own experiences, and allowed to unite. Because these foreign religions have taken our place, have occupied that place where we can find a space to really work out our differences, work out our way forward. Because we are occupied with this unreasonable thinking, like that most Africans sit there and we are thinking about Jesus, appearance of Jesus one day to really redeem us from our problems. And we fail to do practical things that will liberate us from these things that Europeans have put on us, this hardship that Europeans have put on us, enslavement and colonialism. We need to the only way to fight them will be to unite and find African ways and African solutions towards them. But we find that difficult, that people are not really thinking about those things. The people are more into their religions and these foreign things that have been imposed on us and is holding us back.
Yeah.
Religion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I would also like to add, we have instruments. Like I said, during time of Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, 1960s, the OAU, Organization of African Union, now African Unity, now African Union, was established to bring Africans together. So from 1960s now, how many years is it? Why the African Union still toothless? Why is 60% of the budget of the African Union covered by the Americans and the Europeans? If somebody covers your budget, then they will own you. That building of the African Union, the new building, it was built by the Chinese, not by Africans. And when the Chinese built it, they put a lot of wires in it also. Every meeting that's done in that building is immediately transferred. Every report is gone to China. All the walls are ears. So we have those instruments. So how do we develop those instruments? Also outside African Union, we have smaller organizations like ECOWAS, East African Community. For the Horn of Africa, we have IGAD. But if you look at IGAD, all the countries in the Horn of Africa, they don't work together in cooperation. What they try to do is to dominate IGAD. So Ethiopia wants to dominate IGAD. They want to put the chair, the executive chair of IGAD, they want him to be Ethiopian and to promote Ethiopian policy. Eritrea will try to do the same. Kenya will try to do the same. So these instruments, instead of being instruments of cooperation, they are being transformed into instruments of dominance. So like I said, religion is important, but also policies. Because organizations like African Union, but also the country policies, they are all secondary appendages of Western systems. We don't have stable systems. Why do we have this war in Congo? What's Rwanda doing? Rwanda is a tool of UK and the Americans. So because they want to exploit the resource of Congo. So when, for example, when the United Kingdom had this policy to transfer refugees from the UK to Rwanda, what does Rwanda get from it? They will get money from the UK, but also the UK knows Rwanda is a gateway to the Congo. So I think countries should change their policies. We don't have African policies for Africans. It's all extension. Our elections are funded by Western governments. How many NGOs do we have in Africa? When Trump closed the USAID now, because now USAID is transferred to the State Department, in Ethiopia, 5,000 people became unemployed. In Kenya, more than that. But this is in terms of employment. But most of the vaccines, the medication, all this aid was covered by the Americans. When the USAID stopped, Ethiopians could not even import wheat from Djibouti because it was the USAID that was transporting the wheat from the port of Djibouti to Ethiopia. So outside African Union, African countries, when they make their budget, they, like a certain percentage they leave it is covered by the Europeans or by Americans. It could be in terms of the donation, or it could be in terms of debt, whatever, money that lend. And if someone lends you money, there is a lot of interest rate, the World Bank, IMF, whatever. Those are the ones that control Africa. So we need to free ourselves from these organizations.
And these organizations, they pass on their religion to us, and they occupy us with their religion. And with that, we're not able to really liberate ourselves, really go into our African ways, which can allow us the freedom to think along our African lines. So we are always tied to these people through their religion and through their politics, and they control us in that way. We would like to invite the rest of more questions from everyone who has a question, so that, because I think the time is
also opinions,
yes, an opinion, of how what you also view. Thank you.
We give thanks to Rasajete Ashia and the brother, I'll try and get his name, for the presentation.
Say Meb.
Meb, give thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, so we've heard a lot. And at this moment, we invite contributions, comments, questions for the presenters, or for I and I to deliberate about. So at this stage, if there is any question, any comments, we will welcome that. We give thanks. So from Brother Meb, seems we heard a lot of things about Emperor Selassie and his leadership in Ethiopia. Those of us from the Rastafari side, we have the history of Haile Selassie that we embrace looks more about his positive sides, his contribution to African unity, the formation of African organization of African unity. And like you mentioned, his speech, I think at the League of Nations or to the UN, that he told the world what is likely to happen as a result of what has been done to Ethiopia. In that light, are there, from an Eritrean Ethiopian perspective, other positive aspects about Haile Selassie that the people remember him for, give thanks, or some development project he left off in Ethiopia that he's well remembered or celebrated for by Eritreans, Ethiopians? Thank you.
As I said earlier, we are talking about 1930s to 70s. I think it's important to look at Haile Selassie's legacy, I think, face by face, in my opinion. When Haile Selassie was young, as I said, he introduced the first constitution of Ethiopia. He tried to transform Ethiopia from this aristocratic system to modern democracy, although it would be, there is some noise coming. Can you tell Sadia to mute? Oh,
I
okay.
think she's muted.
Yeah. So when he was young, he tried to transform Ethiopia, really, to transform this aristocratic system to transform Ethiopia, not really republic, but into modern system where you have the head of the government, the royal, the monarchy. But he failed because he had a lot of resistance from the aristocracy. So he was not able to push them aside. So that's why the system aged. And when Haile Selassie died, he was in his 80s, and most of the ministers were like that. So there was resentment by the young generation against the system. And also,
I think he asked for positive things. He didn't ask for more negative things.
Yeah. I'm
negative.
I'm coming. So that constitution was very important because everything starts with constitution. That's the start of institutions. And the education system in Ethiopia. If you want to talk about education in its system in Ethiopia, you cannot talk about education without mentioning Haile Selassie. So modern education. Also infrastructure. When Haile Selassie came to power, Ethiopia was a very primitive country. They had very, very, very few roads or highways. So during Haile Selassie time, there was a lot of infrastructure development, and the country was connected north, south, east, west, whatever. And also the governments that came after Haile Selassie, the one that deposed him in 1974, the one that came in 1991, also the current governments, they were worse than Haile Selassie. So if you look at the average Ethiopian, I think Haile Selassie is remembered mostly positively in Ethiopia because the experience that came after him was worse. At least during his time, outside that famine in the 1970s, at his time, Ethiopians could feed themselves really because famine cannot control it. The problem was only the policy. He did not fight the famine, but because famine comes from environmental change, especially the 1970s famine, so Ethiopia could not do anything about it. But generally, people were really had a better life than they have now. After Haile Selassie, there are more wars compared to his time. Also, the communist system that came after him, the students and the military system that deposed Haile Selassie because they were communists, they did not consider the Ethiopian traditional systems, values, whatever, in their governance. Because they said, we are communists. And the policies they introduced was not fit to the country. While Haile Selassie's policy was better in that regard. At least it was bottom up, despite the resistance of the aristocracy. But I think the education system is the main legacy of Haile Selassie. The modern education system of Ethiopia, with the collaboration of Americans, whatever. Because when he came to power, like the rest of Africa, there was no literacy really. Most of Ethiopians were not educated. But in a few years, they built a university, and there were a lot of Ethiopians that went to America, Europe, whatever, and got educated. And that became his problem, because these young people wanted position. They resented the system. So, but generally, I would say the education system he has introduced was his main legacy.
Thank you. And I would like to add that religion has can play a good role in our development as well, because people like Paul Bogo, they were Baptists, or the all the main denominations of Baptist churches, and then the Ethiopian Baptist was where he came from. And
I have a question. Yes, I have a question for Meb. Yes. What positive do you have to say about the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the role it has played in keeping Ethiopia united and independent? Yes. What role has the Ethiopian Orthodox done? Yes, the role it has played in that, making Ethiopia united and strong, and then free, independent. Yes. Thank you very much.
You mean Haile Selassie?
The Orthodox Church. He's talking about the Orthodox Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the role of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church in the development.
Oh, the Orthodox Church is difficult. I don't know if.
If you had my question, it was about how the role that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has played. I mean, the role that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has played in making Ethiopia united and independent. That was the question, yes. Because you're a historian, so you should be able to tell us the role that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has played in the development of Ethiopia as a nation from them time to this time. Thank you very much for your insightful.
Thank you. I think there are two roles of the Ethiopian church. If you see now it has changed a little bit, but if you see the Ethiopia of 1960s, 1970s, and also later, a lot of people would say Ethiopia is a Christian country, but that's not true. Or Ethiopia is not. They would say Ethiopia is a Coptic Orthodox country. But I think so the Coptic Orthodox in Ethiopia, there are 43 to 45%. The rest are modern churches or evangelical churches, Muslim, and so on. So if you look Ethiopia as a Christian country, because the aristocracy and the monarchy were Christians, so this defends the country, like the countries in Europe at the time. So, the united Ethiopia, especially the highland of Ethiopia, northern Ethiopia. So starting from the Aksumite until Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian church played a great role in uniting Ethiopia, but only the highland of Ethiopia. The eastern part of Ethiopia were mostly Muslim. The southern and the western part of Ethiopia were they followed traditional African beliefs, and these people were considered like secondary citizens in Ethiopia. So if you look at the government, at the system which was dominated by the Orthodox Church, you can say Ethiopia was strong because the government was really dominated by Orthodox. So it had a role in that. But because it's dominated by the Orthodox system, it also marginalized all these groups the Muslim communities, those that follow the African beliefs. They were not considered as Ethiopian citizens. Why? That's why their land was appropriated by the aristocracy or by the Orthodox Church, because the aristocracy thought they were entitled to take the land of these poor people. So it has both roles. It had a role in uniting the country, especially the Christians. Also, it had a role in creating marginalization.
Can I throw something in real quick? Yeah, appreciate it, brother Meb. Really, really thankful for what you've done. I love what you said about the bottom-up approach of His Majesty, and I think we have to bear in mind, like you're saying, the context, right? So His Majesty is living in the space where you have a system, an entrenched system, even before he was born, right? Talking about the Orthodox Church, it wasn't created around this time, right? The feudal system existed way before he came. So I think it's important to think about what was Haile Selassie's disposition, rather than marking out the specific situations and using them as marker of maybe his let's put it this way, the validity of his work, right? So you raised 3 points: the land thing, the equality of the ethnic groups, and democracy. Of course, these are, with democracy, we can talk about it in different ways, right? Because the concept is quite nebulous, right? But Haile Selassie pushed against all these. You check out his speech, he was doing a lot of things. He tried to distribute lands in a certain way that was pretty unorthodox. He distributed crown lands to people, tried to lower the taxes so that people, at the situation where you say, yeah, those who can't even afford taxes can have the land anyway and find ways to pay later. And he was taking the taxes real low. As far as the ethnicity thing, definitely Haile Selassie was against that. And again, let's put it back in context. The fact that you're King of Kings doesn't mean there's not a system. So more or less, he was going up against that system. You said it a couple of times, or a number of times, that he was facing resistance. I think we have to bear that in mind from these people who are benefiting from that arrangement. He was going against that, right? So I'm more interested in his disposition in this case. How was he approaching things? He was moving against a lot of odds, So tradition is very strong. Okay, so back to another point you made that was very interesting was Ethiopia being landlocked. If you think about it, it wasn't by Ethiopia that Ethiopia didn't create that situation, right? And I love how you started out saying you're both Ethiopian and Eritrean, and I love to hear how you feel about that too, if you want to tie it into this. So Ethiopia is landlocked because of colonialism. These borders were created by other people. Another kind of system was imposed on us, right? So Haile Selassie is making moves to have access to the sea, right? And he's maybe going through what you were talking about, being from both Ethiopia and Eritrea. I'm taking like Selassie seeing it like that. This is our family. This is an extension of our land. Something happened, and these rigid borders were created here under different. I'm not going to speculate, but depending on who was in charge over there, it wouldn't have any difficulty to have access to the sea, right? Now, because of the colonial situation and other factors, of course, it became almost untenable, right? The idea became something that wouldn't work. So, of course, certain things will happen. I'm not saying it was a great thing. I don't think Selassie was interested in imposing on anyone, going by the way he spoke, the words he spoke. So that's one thing I wanted to throw in there. And the final thing was whether he was an instrument of the West. That's a very interesting one because I think right now anyone can go online and read some of the U.S. State Department's records about their interactions with heads of state. Not everything, but what they want us to be able to have access to. There are moments where they're talking about Selassie, and it's obvious that they know he's not their puppet. You know he's not their instrument. They say things like, "We got to be careful because this old man, da 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 da, he will never do what we want him to do. We got to be careful because he's looking out for his people." It's there in the records. So Selassie, maybe people romanticize things, and sometimes we pinpoint particular situations and mark him failure or success. But at certain points, we have to get past that. I want to think about the disposition. What was he going for? And in all the areas that you raised problems, I want to say that what was his attitude? His attitude there, was he okay with it? Like, oh, this is how it is? No, he had another kind of disposition. He was going against it. That's what I want to emphasize. All right. So I want to thank you. And if you want to throw me something, Tyne, maybe how you feel about being Eritrean and Ethiopian. And the question is, don't you think that's how Selassie was seeing the arrangement between Ethiopia and Eritrea?
I think that, in my opinion, that's a failure of Haile Selassie. We have to be clear on this one, because after the Italians were defeated in Eritrea in 1941 by the British. Like I said, the Eritrean, Somalia, Libya question went to the great powers at the time, because they could not agree. Then it became an issue in the United Nations. And then the United Nations decided that Eritrea should be federated with Ethiopia. So this, I think, is called Resolution 970, something like that. So Eritrea became under Ethiopia in 1952 with the federation. When after the Italians left, Eritrea was occupied by the British for 10 years. So after the 10 years, when the federation started, Eritrea was passed to Ethiopia under Haile Selassie. So when Haile Selassie was in power, Ethiopia was not landlocked. I understand that the problem was a colonial problem, because Eritrea was colonized by Italy, Djibouti was colonized by France, Sudan, whatever, and Egypt were colonized by the British. That I understand. But after the resolution of the United Nations, Ethiopia had regained access to the sea, because Eritrea became part of Ethiopia under this federal system.
But I think you're skipping ahead. Selassie started ruling in the 30s. So there'd been a period before that.
No, Haile Selassie, when he returned to Ethiopia in 1941, after the Italians were defeated in Eritrea from Britain, because he was in exile. So he came back in the 1940s. And the issue at that time, from 1941, because it was the British that defeated the Italians in Eritrea, so they occupied Eritrea for 10 years, from 1941 till 1951. And then when the federation was instituted in 1952, Eritrea became part of Ethiopia, and Ethiopia has the Red Sea. The coastal part of Eritrea became coastal part of Ethiopia. Assad and Massawa, whatever, this became part of Ethiopia. But when Haile Selassie dissolved the federation in 1962, the Eritreans went to fight because they wanted the autonomy to stay in Ethiopia, but under the federal system. But the federation was dissolved by Haile Selassie. Regarding the whether he was an instrument of the Americans or not, history speaks for itself. If you read the book of John Spencer was the American advisor of Haile Selassie. Throughout the time of Haile Selassie, from 1936 until Haile Selassie was deposed, John Spencer was with Haile Selassie. As I said earlier, in most African countries, governments are run by the military. Military is the main institution. And the Ethiopian military, including the Eritreans, the commandos that were trained by the Israelis, were trained by American money. Like I said, Ethiopia was part of this Red Sea, Indian Ocean security structure of America that included Saudi Arabia and Egypt. If you Google Bitter Lake meeting between Haile Selassie, King Farouk, and King Saud of Saudi Arabia, you will see when they were greeting Roosevelt on that ship in Bitter Lake in the Suez Canal in 1945. So that policy of America of 1945, because the Americans knew that the World War was ending, so they were planning to expand to make sure their presence in the Red Sea area is ensured. So before the end of the war, they knew the Soviets were also going to expand, so they had to preempt. So the Americans made an agreement with Ethiopia, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia to control the Red Sea. This is fact.
Can I come in real quick, please?
Please.
Quick question, my brother. Good to see you, and thank you for all the insights. I have a lot of questions for you, but because of the time, I think I might catch up with you on the side. So, quick question. With reference to your reference to Haile Selassie or his government at the time as an instrument of Western, or Western, whatever the term was, could it also be that it was a strategic situation of maybe interest, right? I'll give you an example. Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana, he positioned himself in such a way that he could benefit from both Russia and America. He built the hydroelectric dam as a good example of that and all of that. Could it be that instead of seeing His Majesty's government as an instrument of that nature, it was rather something that was strategically beneficial to his government? First question. Second question. Before the federation that you mentioned, right, what was the relationship between Eritrea and Ethiopia? Was there anything of that nature? Because back in the day, I remember I would see names of Eritreans and Ethiopians, and they're the exact same. I would look at the people, they're the exact same. So when we look at the so-called liberation, and pardon my use of the phrase that so-called, but when we look at the so-called liberation of Eritrea from Ethiopia, was it really something that was in the interest of the people, or it was something that rather was fueled by external interests? As you stated, Ethiopia, for instance, lost its access to the sea, etc. Was it something that was fueled by external forces? Hey, let's go in, let's do this, let's get Eritreans agitated, use whatever traditional or long-standing issues there may be to have them agitate towards His Majesty's government and let it look like it's a liberation struggle so that the people will sign on to it. Whereas in real terms, it's just splitting up people of the same heritage. This is my question to my brother. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the first question about strategic interests, all countries have got their strategic interests. The Americans could have their strategic interests. The local, the Ethiopians or whatever African governments also, they have strategic interests. So there's no doubt about that. The Americans had interests. Haile Selassie also had interests because Ethiopia also wants to be a dominant African power or regional power. Like he said with Ghana, for example, Nkrumah had to work both with the Americans and with the Russians. Haile Selassie also did work with the Russians. For example, the refinery in Assab was built by the Russians. Although the Americans had more presence in Ethiopia, still worked with Haile Selassie worked with the Russians. He's also one of the co-founders of the non-aligned movement, because the world was divided by the Cold War into West and East. So most African countries and some Asian and South American countries had this non-aligned movement. It was led mostly by Ethiopia, India, and those countries. So that overlap or matching between regional and global interests, there is no doubt about that. Even now, for example, when the Americans were fighting the Somalis on this war and terror, whatever, the Ethiopians were giving the Americans, I'm not talking about time of Haile Selassie, currently, I mean. So the Americans have a base in Ethiopia. So that's their interest. But the Ethiopians also have interest because they have access to American money. They also have become a regional power in the region. So this regional interests and global interests are overlapping always. One thing that I forgot about the positive things of Haile Selassie, as you know, Ethiopia has now this Renaissance Dam. This is the Nile Dam. And the concept was started by Haile Selassie. Because the Nile water was controlled mostly by Egypt and Sudan, based on the agreement of 1927 and 1959. Because at that time, Sudan and Egypt were under Britain. So these were colonial agreements. And the colonial rule, because Sudan and Egypt were under Britain, so all the Nile water would be controlled by Egypt and Sudan. So Haile Selassie was against it, but he didn't have the technological power at the time, and he was deposed. But that concept, that idea was started by him. Now the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is almost finished, and I think it's going to be inaugurated in the coming September. With the question on Eritrea and Ethiopia, identity is a strange concept. If you look at the time of my grandfather, because I was born at the time of Haile Selassie, I remember as a kid visiting my Haile Selassie. On the wall of my grandfather's place, there was a photo, a portrait of Haile Selassie in that house. But then things changed. If you look at my generations, we think we are Eritreans. We don't think we are Ethiopians, because identity is not a fixed thing. It is who is it? Benedict Anderson. He defines countries as imagined communities. So you are what you imagine. So the current generation of Eritreans, they think they are Eritreans. They don't think they are Ethiopians. Like I said, my grandfather's generation, especially the Christians, they thought they were Ethiopians. But that federation changed everything. The young people that saw when the federation was dissolved, when the Eritrean flag was removed, when Amharic became a national language of Eritrea, because in the federation time, Eritreans were the national language of Eritrea was Arabic and Tigrinya. But when the federation was dissolved, Amharic became the national language of Eritrea. So all those young people, university students, they opposed this, and those were the ones that went to the field to fight the Ethiopians. So you have a movement of identity, change of identity. So people are not fixed. So like I said, my father's generation, father's generation, and my generation are different.
So I guess my bigger question though is, do you feel like it was somebody's revolution that was started in Eritrea, or was that something that actually benefits the people of Eritrea, even with the benefit of hindsight?
I think many countries had interest for independence of Eritrea because Ethiopia was seen as this Christian island, and as you know, there was a rivalry between Egypt and Ethiopia to be a regional power, and Egypt wanted to control the Nile water, and also Egypt wanted to control the Red Sea. Even this issue is still continuing today. Egypt is against the building of this Renaissance dam, although Ethiopia has built it. Sometimes you've seen maybe in the news that Egyptian reporters talking about bombing this Renaissance dam so that Egypt will have 100% access to the water of the Nile. So when the Eritreans started the war, they were supported by Egypt a lot. The founders of Eritrea, like Ibrahim Sultan, Wulda Marian, when they went in exile, when they left Eritrea, they were based in Cairo. They were using the radio, the Egyptian radio, to broadcast to Eritrea. Also the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, whatever, because they are Muslim and they saw Ethiopia as a Christian country, but also they wanted to control the Red Sea. So they also supported the Eritrean revolution. So like everywhere, when you start something, you'll have groups that will support you. There will also be groups that will be against you. So because the strategic interests of Ethiopia and Egypt, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia was different. So all the Arabs supported the Eritrean revolution. Sudan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. So they were giving money to Eritreans. They were trained. Most of the first fighters of Eritrea were trained in Iraq and Syria, whatever. So I cannot deny that there was interest of other countries, definitely.
Thank you, my
and
brother.
has Ethiopia benefited, has Eritrea benefited as a result of this, what has happened now, this current situation? Has Eritrea benefited?
Which current situation?
As we have now, with Eritrea separated, separate from Ethiopia, independent from Ethiopia, has it been of beneficial to Eritrea?
It has not benefited, but
Ethiopia?
it has not benefited because what happened was the liberators, when Eritrea became independent in 1991, the liberators became dictators. Now we have a man that's ruling Eritrea for the last 34 years. If you look at the living standard, Eritreans were better off when they were with Ethiopia. There is no question about that.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's not the question. But although they are suffering, but they don't want to be part of Ethiopia anymore because their identity has changed.
Before I mute my mic, please teach me to pronounce your name. I don't feel good shortening your name for convenience.
Mebratu, yeah.
And the last name, please.
Ato Abraham.
Atowebra.
The meaning
Atowebra.
Yeah.
behind is behind is like, what's the meaning of Atawe behind?
The meaning?
Yeah, the meaning, yeah, for Atawe behind. Because I know behind has got
Atawa means entered, like entered. Berhan is light. Atawa means entered, so light has entered.
Thank you very much. Yes, a question. One, what information do you have for us as a marine biologist? You know, you're on a Pan-African platform, if you like, Rastafari platform. And as a marine marine biologist, what information do you have for us? And then secondly, how do you view the Kebanegast? Do you view it as authentic history or a book of fiction? Thank you very much for your wonderful time this evening.
With regards to marine biology, Africa has a lot of coastal areas, and a lot of this, even outside the marine system or the biological system, all these are strategic areas as well, because most of the transportation, global transportation, takes place by sea. So ports are very important strategically. That's why you have conflict in the Red Sea at the moment. The Saudis, the Israelis, the Emiratis are all are coming to the Red Sea. You have 6 countries that are based in Djibouti. If you look at Djibouti, Djibouti is hardly a country, it's a tiny country. But you have naval base of America, Japan, Germany, Italy, whatever. There are 6 countries because that's the entrance, that's the place that connects the Indian Ocean to Europe from Bab el Mandeb to Suez Canal. So these are strategic areas. So Africa has a lot of strategic areas, but also in terms of marine resources, in terms of fisheries, whatever, there is a lot of resource in Africa. Somalia has one of the largest coastal areas in Africa, but Somalia is fragmented. It's hardly a country because the government is not stable. So what is in Somalia is there is always conflict, and the coastal areas are now controlled by the Emiratis, the Turkish, and also there is a lot of oil in the coast of Somalia. And many African countries also could have many coastal resources, offshore oil resources, gas resources, minerals, whatever. And a lot of African countries, many African countries do not know what they have. So in terms of fisheries, if you look at a satellite image of the Indian Ocean, you will see hundreds of trawlers that are just exploiting the marine resources of Somalia, if you talk about countries, but generally Africa. So we have a lot of resources, but like inland with our mining resources, the marine resources are also not managed very well, or they are being exploited by Western governments. If you look at coastal communities, you're from Ghana. I was in 2012. I was in southern Ghana in a place called Mimia. So I spent the 2 weeks and working with fishermen, and like in Eritrea, in Somalia, Sudan, whatever, the coastal population is very poor, but they have a lot of resources. But the people are really, really poor. They are marginalized in terms of participation into political system, economic development. Most of the coastal communities in Africa are really poor and marginalized. So that's what I would say with marine biology. I think there was another question outside marine biology.
I said the Kebanegast. Do you see it as a authentic history or as a book fiction, the Kebra Negas, yes.
Oh, that's difficult. I think the fiction, in my opinion, but it is engraved or ingrained into the history of the people of Ethiopia. Maybe now it doesn't exist, but until 1974, during the time of Haile Selassie, that was the source of power. Because to be a king of Ethiopia, you have to come from the Solomonic dynasty, and that is its main source is the Kebra Guest. So, in my opinion, I don't even think the Aksumites were descendants of the Israelis. They are, in my opinion, they were Africans. Maybe because it's the Horn of Africa, you always have movement of people coming from Middle East to Africa, from Africa to the Middle East. That's why people in the Horn of Africa are lighter compared to the rest of Africa, because there was a lot of intermixing among people from Africa and the Middle East. But generally, I don't believe there was a queen called Sheba, and she went and she saw Solomon, and then she had a child called Menelik, and then what do you call the Ark of Covenant? They were brought to Aksum. I don't believe in that. Yeah, but it was a source of legitimacy, source of power. So, like I said, identity is always imagined. Like if you look at the Roman Empire, for example, the two kids that started the Roman Empire, they were lost, and then they were raised by was it a wolf, whatever? They were raised by the milk of wolf. So
Yep, was a wolf.
every country has got its own myths and things like that. So I would not say it's right or wrong, but it was a source of power. So if it's a source power, it's real. It's imagined, but its impact is real. So it's real.
So my question, can I put in a question? What is your view of what if Emperor Haile Selassie had joined the Casablanca group and Africa was united around 70s? It started from the 50s, 70s when this Eritrea situation was going on. If Africa had united, do you think Africa would have been able to reverse this interest of foreigners to make Eritrea separate and now be a sovereign nation?
I think I think about that question a lot because Africa is vast. So I don't think there's a thing called African political economy, because Africa is diverse, east, west, so it's a huge continent. I don't think it can be like one country, whatever. So I think the unity of Africa should be in terms of coordination, where the borders are really loose, people move from place to place. They know each other, they have confidence among each other, so they don't fight, because there is a lot of barrier among Africans. So, and I don't know if people like Nkrumah, was the idea to make Africa one country or not?
Yes, one currency, one army.
Currency is possible. One economy, one
army,
currency can
one
be
army.
done. Yeah.
Yes.
But
also, could you tell us your experience with the Ghana on a Sunday issue when you were in Ghana when you had to go on your field trip? What was your experience with the Ghanaians? Your experience with Ghanaians when you had to go on your field trip on a Sunday?
I cannot say a lot about Ghana, because my experience, it was village, and village people, they're nice, very, very open. I enjoyed it a lot. So I would play football with them. I would even go to their huts, whatever. So, but these are villagers, so village people are very, very nice. They don't have complex life. So I don't know if they represent. They are Ghanaians, of course, but
When it came to your field trip, when it came to your field trip on a day,
what?
when it came to your field trip, when you had to do that field trip on a Sunday.
Oh, you're talking about religion now.
Yeah.
Yeah, religion is difficult. Yeah, because we had planned to do a field trip for our program was made by weekly, so we were going out every day from Monday to Sunday. So we thought Sunday we were going out to do field trip. So we came out. We came to the boat, and all the Ghanaians were not around. So the next day we met them on Monday, and we said, "What happened? Where were you on Sunday? We were supposed to go to the field." And then they said, "How come you ask? How come you ask about field work on Sunday? Sunday is for church." That's what they said. Yeah. So that was quite unique for me. Yeah. And like I said, Ethiopia, Eritrea, especially the highlands, they are very Christian people. But in Ghana, I saw it's more Christianity, or the church is more dominant. Like Sunday, you see everyone in their attire, carrying the Bible or whatever. I haven't seen something like that even in Kenya. I've lived in Kenya, and for me, Ghana was more religious. I don't know what religious is, but they practice it. I mean, they go to church, a lot of these gospel songs and things like that.
And it's interesting to find out that as Culture Radio has put out, the Bible is a very, very fictional book, but that is what we base our reality on, and it is informing our predicament we are in right now, because we are not addressing our issues on scientific terms and on biological terms, on chemistry and physics. We are going on sentiments and superstition, and which is belittling our efforts to really get somewhere with unity, which is going to take us further.
Yeah. I think education is a key, because with education, then your political system, every system will be science-based. Like in this country, like you said earlier, there are churches, but they are not full. People don't go to church. Even the daily thinking, whatever is based on science, is founded on science.
Yeah.
Can I come in?
Yeah, please go.
So, Brother Ajete, thank you so much for bringing Brother Membran to the discussion. And I wanted to hint on something that you mentioned, Brother Ajete, earlier on, when you said that the saints of the Bible in Ethiopia were all painted white. Right? You mentioned that. And I wanted to say that, in fact, they were all painted black before the Italians invaded Ethiopia. When I started studying Ethiopian history, Ethiopian culture, Rastafari and everything, those are one of the things that made me very excited, in learning African culture, was that all the saints, all the Ethiopian depictions of Jesus, Mary, the saints, they were all African. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I wanted to say a lot of artifacts and a lot of symbols and emblems and all of that from the West, especially Italy, were copied from Ethiopia, especially the Nazi sign even. The Nazi sign, I saw a building in Ethiopia that had a sign, and I was surprised that it was stolen from Ethiopia. I don't even, Brother Mebratu, maybe you can tell us what that sign is, because that sign originated from Ethiopia. We know that, they stole a lot of Ethiopian artifacts, like the obelisks. A lot of obelisks were stolen from Ethiopia. So I just wanted to mention that in fact, they were all things were African depictions. And I also, Brother Mebratu mentioned that Ethiopia has always been Christian and Islam, and it wasn't a foreign religion. So I haven't really studied this very well yet, and I get confused along the line when I'm studying. So there's a mention of Constantine that brought Christianity to Ethiopia. So sometimes when I'm making that argument that Ethiopia has always been a Christian nation and origin of Christianity, then I'm confronted with that argument that Constantine actually brought that religion to Ethiopia. So if brother can clarify on that for me, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think with the introduction, so when I said Christianity and Islam in Ethiopia, Eritrea, I mean, it's very old. I was comparing to the rest of Africa. So, like you said, it was introduced, but it was introduced in the 4th century. Before, in the 4th century, before the 4th century, the Aksumite kings, if you look at the writing, like the obelisks and the stele that he mentioned, they had inscriptions, the writings. So they were worshipping natural elements like the sun, the moon, whatever. But in the 4th century, King Ezana, if you look at the writing of King Ezana, the first part was when he had African beliefs. And then in the second part, he became Christian, and the Aksumites declared that they were Christian kingdom. So this is the 4th century. So if you look at it from 4th century until now, we are talking about 1,600 years or more. So that's a long time to form a culture, or for religion to be part of the culture of the society, to be part of the values and systems of society. Like we say, for example, the West or Europe, they are Christians. They have Christian values. Even the people that do not believe in Christianity now, they might not believe in God, whatever, but their value is Christian. The daily movement, the way their morals, the way they think right and wrong, whatever, it is dominated by Christianity, because the culture evolved within Christianity. So, and in Ethiopia, Eritrea, it is similar. So, from the 4th century until now, it's a long period for religion to be part of the culture, or to be part of the belief system of the people. But if you look at the rest of Africa, maybe Christianity came with a British or whatever 200 years ago. 200 years ago is not a lot. That's why you have a mix of, even though the people that call themselves Christians, they still they are influenced a lot by African beliefs. Although they are Christians, African beliefs have a lot of influence in their life. So with the introduction, He said Constantine. Constantine was the king at that time. It was Turkey, Constantinople, and the Roman Empire. I think the religion was introduced by Athanasius, and he was a Greek monk, and also later Frumentius. So it was Athanasius who baptized Ezana when he became Christian. So it came originally from Greek, but that was a long time ago. And also then it evolved within Ethiopia also. Like he said, the Ethiopians they have their own script, their own writing system. That's how I write. When I write a letter to my mom, that's what I use for Tigrinya or Amharic. So we have our own script. Like he said, also the drawings, whatever, there were some of them were African, and some of them also it's called a Byzantine art. It's a Middle Eastern. There is African and Middle Eastern. It's a mix. So that's what I can say.
Okay. So then, if it was introduced, then it's not an original religion. Yes, I do agree. Ethiopia is the oldest. Ethiopia, Egypt are the oldest Christian nations. I mean, if not in the world, then Africa. But it wasn't the origin of Christianity because it came from somewhere, right?
No, it's not. Ethiopia is not, because if you follow the Bible, Christianity started in the Middle East, isn't it? You have to go to Palestine, Israel, whatever. From there, you went to Greek, to a lot of these Arab countries like Iraq, Mesopotamia at that time. They were mostly Christian countries. It's later that they converted to Islam. This northern Africa, Egypt, Morocco, whatever, 1,000 years ago, it was all Coptic Christian. It was converted.
Right. So I wanted to say one more thing I wanted to throw in is for Emperor Haile Selassie, even though he was a Christian king, he also declared that everybody is free to practice whatever they believe, because we cannot. What was his quote? We do not consider our religion alone valid, and nobody can dictate the realms of God. Something I don't remember the speech verbatim. Somebody can help me with that. So he Emperor Haile Selassie, said everybody. Yeah, everybody is free to practice his religion the way he sees fit. So he wasn't imposing Christianity on anybody. And we Rastas believe, we are individual worshippers. So we don't also impose religion.
Yeah. That's the constitution of Ethiopia, because he was the one who introduced the constitution, and the constitution was not religious. It was a liberal constitution, the first constitution. But still, the church and the aristocracy had a lot of power in Ethiopia at the time of Haile Selassie. Because religion, as I said, it was source of legitimacy, source of power. Ethnicity was also source of power. Although you could be free to worship, you could go to mosque, but you don't have really on the ground. You don't have equal rights. For example, Haile Selassie, his dad was his father was Ras Makonnen. He was Amhara. His mother was a Muslim Oromo. That's why you don't hear a lot about his mother's ancestry, because the Oromos were not as equal as the Amharas. And if you are a Muslim, he cannot also be a leader. He have to be a Coptic Christian. That's why when they deposed Liji Iyasu, the guy before him, that's why they had to blackmail him, or they have to depict him as a Muslim. This is a guy who's eating with Muslim, whatever. So religion was important. People were free to practice. But when it comes to economic and political power, then it's different. Even in the UK now, we are equal. Nobody will tell you you're not equal. But in reality, there is oppression in the UK, isn't it? Based on race, whatever. We know this.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Give thanks, right? We've done more than 2 hours of the allotted time for the.
Yeah, and tomorrow is Monday.
We'll almost wrap up. I wanted to also ask a question that Rasajiti, we look at religion and the implications it has had on Africa, like division among people and all that. But on the other end, when we say religious belief and the development of Africa, we realize through religious belief, there has been the establishment of schools, health centers in Africa. So what is the African alternative to religion? And how can we outpace these religious bodies in the development of Africa? Because infrastructure-wise, it looks like they are doing something that they are filling a vacuum. The people want education, religion is providing. The people want health, religion is providing. What is the African alternative? And how do we respond to our people's needs in terms of education, healthcare, infrastructure, without dependency on this religious belief that we know comes with division, comes with dogma.
Thank you for your question. I think it's all about Sankofa, because we were doing quite good before the Europeans came amongst us and said they discovered us. They came to say they discovered us. And today, we believe we are not educated enough to say that we were not discovered. Our leaders, in fact, when they speak, agree that we were discovered. So we must educate ourselves properly around that. When they have built schools, they have built these schools to tell us about themselves, to keep us, and so to foster their constitution that they left with us. When they enslaved us and they colonized us, they built a constitution to make an African and extractive economy to extract from us. We have inherited that constitution. We have not been able to change those constitutions. We still live by those constitutions. I think that's the failure of us, as a people, not to sit down and restructure our constitution to favor us. Because they now build the hospitals and giving us foreign medicine. Now, this medicine that they import for us, during the COVID, it was very clear, when the COVID time came, it was very clear that the COVID vaccines were not developed for our benefit, were not developed for us. It was made for them. And then they started taking all sorts of stories that, yeah, we were immune. Africans were immune from COVID and this and that and that. When the push came to shove, they were giving us their medicine, which were expired anyway. Some were expired, and the disrespect around that, showing our weakness and our lack of attention to our own welfare. We have our herbs, which are very good for us, which we were in tune with before they came, and then they came out with their Western medicine and Western hospitals. We, in fact, didn't have a need for hospitals or things that is in the modern world these days, like asylums, mad houses, orphanages, old people's homes, are creeping into our society now. You see, breaking down our social fabric, which was so rich, that kept us as Africans. So I think Sankofa really looking back again at our structures and our institutions, strengthening them to be African, and according to what our ancestors left us, or what our ancestors lived with for so long, which benefited us. I think it's a way forward rather than not having confidence in ourselves, and because we believe in a divine being, imaginary divine person somewhere who is magical and can one day make things better for us when we die, when we go to heaven, and all sorts of things that we that really don't benefit our day-to-day lives. That we should really have a look at it and see if we can do something about those. You see, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, Raz, give thanks. We will take final question.
I think to add a little bit to what I said, I think it's also economic empowerment, because it's a bit related to poverty as well. So when you are poor, when you are poor, you become dependent on others. So people need to be economically empowered, but also educated. Most of the time we say we should not follow Western education, whatever. I think that's okay. But as people, you can also learn from everywhere, from Western education, Russian education, Chinese education. But I think the question is, you have to know what you want.
Education, not schooling.
Yeah, don't throw your values. So it's not copy and paste. So know what you need, what you want, and then if there is something that you can use from Western education, that's fine. But the problem is most African universities, whatever, they just follow Western system. Even they don't follow the Western system. It's just confused.
Can I make a contribution to this one? Yes, in our educational systems, the Western educational systems, we can also incorporate our own traditional systems into the Western systems, which we don't do. If you look at the Chinese and other cultures, Indians, they do that. So, we are lacking. What would prevent us if we need healthcare to put herbal medicinal studies into our universities? What would prevent us from doing that? Incorporating it into the medical schools. So I studied alternative medicine, right, at school in the university in the US. And we will have medical doctors to come and talk to us, who were believers in alternative medicine. Actually, in the US, some of my doctors that I consult are homeopathic doctors. So they study herbal medicine in medical school. That's what they study and practice. So when they finish, they use herbs. Those are the doctors I go to. So in my classroom, one doctor came. He was oncologist. He was a doctor that treats cancer. They don't have a treatment, a cure for cancer. It's just a treatment, right? That they just pamper you. So this doctor said his son had cancer. A medical doctor whose son had cancer. And the son told him that, in fact, the prognosis was that he would die. They didn't have a cure for him. And the son said he was going to India for medication. He told his parents that he was going there to seek alternative medicine from India. And the parents went with him. So I'm saying a medical doctor, and they went to India, and his son got full recovery, right? We have a lot of herbal medicines in Africa. I have followed a lot of herbalists here in Ghana. I knew one in the era that HIV was profound. that was curing people with HIV. I worked with him for a while before relocating to the United States. So my answer to that is, why won't we, incorporate that into the systems, or even the herbalists here? We've I think in the era of Rawlings, who allowed us to, incorporate our culture a lot into the system. Now we have a lot of herbal clinics in Ghana. So that will answer some of our questions, as if, Christianity is bringing us healthcare, but the healthcare is not also helping us. At the end of the day, the Christians will still run to the traditional healers for their healing. They will say they are healing people in the church or the hospital. The hospital cannot cure them. They still run to the herbalists.
Yes,
So can we advance that system?
Definitely, we must advance the system. We are able to advance it, and more than advance it. Than you see, Prince Charles, yeah, what was his now King Charles? They call him. He has developed cancer, and he says he's going for herbal medicine. He's not going for none of their medicine, because he knows their medicine is with side effects. Our medicine is clean and really cures, and we cure cancer. We are ahead of a man called Dr. Zebi, who they managed to eliminate and take out, as they do to all our heroes. And he's been carrying cancer for so long, until they took him out and we told them about AIDS and everything, that they are the people who plant AIDS amongst us. And then they tell us that the AIDS come from Africa and from African monkeys and all of that sources they try to impose on us,
So this big corporations that will not make money if you,
yeah. Big pharma.
Yeah, I think, are we done, Aisha?
Yes. So
yeah,
I think we've done a lot of the 2 hours, past 2 hours now.
Yeah. So if there are no further questions, contributions, we ask that you give us your closing remarks. Give thanks.
May I go with my closing remarks, please? Okay. Thank you all for attending today's reasoning. I think it's been a very fruitful reasoning. And we will need more time to delve into these issues, because we just can't do 2.5 hour justice, can't do justice to the issues that we have at hand. We have a lot of things going on. So as Rastafari, we are known as the custodians of the land. So we must really come into our own in this time and put fiction away from reality, know where fiction ends and where reality starts, and deal with our reality and carry on from there. Because you see, with the Bible that is so fictional that we hold on to, which has become our reality, we say things like Babylon, and then we look at it and we say Egypt is the enemy of Israel, and we want to look at ourselves like we are Israelites. So if we are Israelites, then Egypt is an enemy. And so we hear of Egyptian war. They're still talking about reparations. They have been reparated. They have their reparations. How about ours, who have suffered even worse than they could ever imagine? Yeah, where's our reparations? And we make Egypt a villain. We make places like Babylon a villain. But Babylon has not enslaved us. Babylon has not colonized us. Babylon is a real place, a people. They did nothing to us. It's just the Bible gives us that thing that we call Babylon as our oppressors. Who are our oppressors? Are Europeans. We should know that. We shouldn't go and making mistakes. We should be making the real issues. We should be attacking Europeans, Americans. We should say it to them. It's not Babylon. It's Europe and America. Egypt, it's not an enemy. That story that Egypt captured Israel and all of that is a fictional thing that we shouldn't pay stock to. And Egypt is a brother. So we should take back our Egyptian lands. We should take back our Egyptian relationships and learn whatever we have to learn from there and move on with it. there's a lot of gaps in our knowledge. Our knowledge gaps is so vast that we should endeavor to continually, as hard as it is, to check on our history, big up our history knowledge, who we are, and then we can be able to make a headway with where we are now, and then to focus into the future. For instance, I keep making this instance where something like BC, AD, most of us, majority of our population don't really know where they stand within that and what it really means. They think that BC means before Christ. A lot of us think that BC means before Christ, which is nothing to do with Christ. BCE is before Common Era. For instance, if we know that, we are able to go into our history books and be able to make more sense of it than being confused about issues. And AD is Anno Domini. Anno Domini means in the year of our Lord. This Lord that they are talking of is nothing to do with Jesus or Christ. It is to do with Julius Caesar, who proposed the calendar, who proclaimed the calendar that we have now, which is 2,000 years old. You see, and so that the Bible tells us that the world is 6,000 years old, that from the creation of where God got tired on a day, and then to Noah, when he didn't know that the animal, well, humankind would turn bad, and then destroyed everything and left certain and created an ark with Noah and everything. Was 2,000 years. Yeah. Now human beings, we are in here. We are even worse than the days of Noah, right? We are worse than the days of Noah. And moving on to Christ. Today is 2,000, so it's 6,000. From that time to Noah, and Noah to now makes it 6,025 years that we're in now. But that doesn't make sense when our history about Egypt goes way millions of years back, where we can count and what lessons we can count from there about our Sankofa and what we can do to ourselves to make ourselves this proud African heritage make a meaning to us. United Nations, down to United Nations, down to ECOWAS. Africans must find ways to organize against these institutions which have been infiltrated to dominate us. We, being the custodians of the land, have a duty to make a mark in this time. We must organize in this time. And Haile Selassie said we must centralize, we must live as one. We must be proactive in our efforts. We must make more headways. We should be talking about making headways like that, about coming together, what we should do. I think next time we should be looking at more of that than all the negative that I'm afraid I've been able to make bear today. If I may say so. But yeah, thank you all for being here. And we thank our ancestors for keeping us up to this time. And we pray towards they will continue to hold us in and strengthen us, rise in our empowerment towards our liberation, total liberation and freedom and unity. Yeah, say Ashe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah. Please, we'll take a short statement, closing statement from your co-speaker, Mebratu.
Oh, I thought Ash had done it.
Go Meb. We enjoy you so much. We enjoy your view so much. Go Meb.
I believe in institutions. What we lack in Africa is we have no institutions. I mean, institutions that we own and control, like we mentioned earlier, the African Union and also other regional institutions. but they are not functional. For example, when there is a meeting in the African Union, you'll have all African leaders coming to Addis Ababa. Sometimes you think, why do they come there? So for them, it's a networking meeting, really. So it's not about the people. So I think we need to have more regional institutions because, as we said earlier, Africa is vast. It cannot be run. Maybe the African Union can coordinate, that's fine. But we'll need, I think, smaller regional institutions, and then on top they can be coordinated. And at the same time, we need to develop our infrastructure, communication. There should be free trade throughout Africa. If Africa is to be independent from Western or other influence, because without free trade, without communication, transportation, then you cannot. So I was talking to one economist who specialized in the Horn on the Horn of Africa. He was telling me the Horn of African countries, among them, they trade only 8% among themselves. 8%. Yeah. So Eritrea trades more with China and with Dubai than it trades with Ethiopia, Djibouti, or Sudan. With Ethiopia, the same. So what's the point then? It means you are a market for China and for Emirat, whatever. And in Africa, our economic structure is not developed. So it's a local economy. The people that go from border to border, the people that sell goods, fruits, and vegetables, those are the most important because our economy is based on agriculture still. But these people, for example, between Eritrea and Ethiopia, there was war. So these people are not able to move from place to place to exchange their produces, whatever, or also to have a cultural exchange and things like that. So I think our institutions need to develop, our infrastructure needs to develop to facilitate better communication throughout Africa. I think that's all I can say for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much, mate. Thank you so much for coming and such short notice as well. We thank you so much.
Okay,
I think
thank you.
We say big thanks, man.
Yeah, have a good night. Bye.
Have a good night.
For your participation. Next, we are discussing our presenter will be Ras Anoche, and we'll be discussing a minute, please. Our next topic will be Dizelinis, the Black Eagle. And our presenter will be Ras Anoche, and that will be on 10th August 2025. We hope to see you all. We thank you for very good reasoning. See you all in the next reasoning. Give thanks. Rastafari.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Rastafari.
Give thanks. Bless.
Welcome.
Ras Coffee.
Empress.
When are we going to start doing our reading on the Africa Unite?
Give thanks, Empress. Very good question. The right time to.
Can we start next Saturday or something?
Okay.
Ras Kofi, is it possible?
Yes, Ras, it's possible.
Okay.
What time?
Okay.
Empress Sadia, how you feel? Is next Saturday good for you?
Yes.
Good.
Next Saturday is good. Yes.
Nice.
We can.
Yes.
We can discuss it further and put it on the platform, and then maybe. Yeah. Okay.
And then we build into it too. Like I like the way you brought the idea up, Empress. So we can build it into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe, so Raskofi, how do we get people involved? So maybe we talk about first chapter or something. We all read one chapter, or what do you think?
Yes, I think we all read the first, and then when we convene on Saturday, we discuss.
Yes.
I think the same time on the same platform, but I think we can put up notices on
Okay.
a general platform for those who are interested to join.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Yes,
Give
Empress
thanks.
idea. That's a good one you brought up. You know?
I'll try and get a PDF. I'll make a PDF available to one and all so that we can discuss it from then on.
Cool.
We can have
Cool.
access to the book because maybe some of us don't have the book, but I'll try by tomorrow or so to have the PDF available for us.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Give
Yes.
thanks.
Anyone who has the PDF can share it. It's one
I
same
think
PDF available.
It's up there already, you
shared one.
know.
Yes,
Yeah.
Rasviro shared one.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we can just repost it, let it circulate again, be fresh on our minds. Yes. Yes.
Give thanks. Give thanks. One love. Let's meet again then.
Every time.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Rasajete, give thanks.
Give
Ras,
thanks.
Kofi,
Thank you.
Charlie.
Thank you,
Yeah.
bro.
So Rasajete, we for do some more of what you're doing, please. Come in and get into it some more because as he say, you have something about the political side of things too. In terms of African unity, in terms of the contemporary situation. So if you get inside there some more, you get what I mean? Yeah.
Thank you.
This one be one thing, but you can take us into your own angles on the political situation, take something and stay on it with us.
I'll see that. Yes. I'll
Please.
look at that. I'll have yeah. Thank you so much
A
for
little more
encouraging.
regular self go good, because sometimes the more we hear it, the more the thing they stick.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Yeah.
Because that's the strategy of this enemies against us, because you see, when you
Exactly.
talk about the Bible, the whole big book that they have there, it never really, when I've been to church, it's every time the same things that they keep repeating to us about what do you call it, prosperity or something, God around certain things that keep us held down,
Yes.
just certain things they keep every time. Christmas messages is the same, until we now even think that there were three wise men and all sorts of things has been better than, but there was something like three wise men and all the things that we think about the Bible which are not true, but they have made it true because of their constant repetition of their and then
So
we
make
have
we do
become
our own.
afraid.
Yeah, make we do our own, Charlie. Yeah, make we repeat some things,
Yeah. So we still have to put our that close for us, to embed it in us and to make it work for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Respect. So Raskofia Santi, thank you,
so
we go link during the week.
all right, friends.
All right.
Give thanks,
Yes.
All right.
Give thanks, brethren. Give thanks, Empress.
Yes, give thanks.
Yes,
Give
bless.
thanks. Thanks.
All
One and all.
right.
Bless. Okay.